Okay, today we're going to talk about, for those of you who are remote, how to get a lab report written based on the bridge testing that you did at home with your 4 tetrahedrons. I'll give you the class data as a data table, so you can use that to compare and add into your notes for your lab report. But this is basically the rubric I'll be putting up. I'm going to go through that really quick here. Your lab report title needs to be 25, it's 25 points. Your title is 24 font centered. Everything else is 11 or 12 font single spaced. There's a space in between each section. Your title that's there shows for 2 points. It needs to be centered. And you really are coming up with a short statement in a few words. That's the heading for your title. It should be simple, clear, and should include something scientific. Your purpose/problem is 2 points. This identifies a question of the experiment it identifies the question the experiment will answer and or explains why the experiment's being done. It may include background research. And the next one is the hypothesis, which you already did in your lab, but we're going to turn it into an if-then statement. This statement predicts the results of the experiment for a point. If it's stated as an if-then statement, that's point number 2 out of the 3. And then you also, for 3 points, you have to identify the independent and dependent variables. So I'm going to walk you through what we did in class so you can see what we did and how we discussed it. So basically, you have to come up with a title. It's centered. You'll have it in Google Docs, so you can type your final draft. The class at school on-site is writing their rough draft, so they literally wrote it all on their notes, so they're just typing it up because it's a class-generated lab report. That is so you know how to write a lab report the way I expect it to be done, and how to include everything in detail to get all the points you can get. So the purpose of the experiment is to see how much weight the 4 tetrahedrons can hold in a specific arrangement or position. Okay? We are using triangles over squares because they're the strongest geometric shape. That's what the research is, because you actually did some experiments prior to the tetrahedrons where you took a square and tested it for rigidity and the triangle for rigidity, and you found out that the triangles are the strongest geometric shape. Skip a line, and your hypothesis, stated in an if-then statement, is if I place 4 tetrahedrons, what do you need to do to finish that statement? And we're using it in an if-then statement. So we were really trying to find the best arrangement. And so you're saying if I place 4 tetrahedrons in the best arrangement or position, then they will hold, and you have to put how many textbooks you predicted that it would hold. Everybody's got a different number, you need to put yours in. My independent variable is what, and my dependent variable is what. So on your handout that you will have once you get this video, that I just showed you the rubric, on that sheet where it says independent variable, you should write IV here. And we remember from SpongeBob, that was the change that was happening. So your independent variable is the what? What's being changed? The class generated the statement of the position of the tetrahedrons. So you would write the independent variable is the position of the tetrahedrons. Your dependent variable, which is dV, is the measure. So what were we measuring in the experiment? My dependent variable is the number what? What were we measuring? Okay. So you need to finish those statements. That is what you should be writing. Everybody's writing the same lab report. Then moving on to the materials list, you can look at the list of materials that you use using your lab sheet. I'm going to show you what we generated as a list. We said that we needed 2 plastic straws per 1 tetrahedron. If you're doing this at home, yours were 4 tetrahedrons, so you would replace your materials of 2 plastic straws with 8 that you needed to make your 4 tetrahedrons. You needed 1 meter of cotton string per tetrahedron, scissors, ruler, the cardboard at 8.5 by 11. You needed textbooks or books with the same mass. You need a blank paper for placing your tetrahedrons and tracing them, and the directions for building the tetrahedron. Then you skip a line. I'm showing you exactly how you would type this. It should look just like this. So the first thing you did in your procedure is how you did the experiment. The first thing you had to do was follow the directions as stated in materials for building your tetrahedrons. Then you placed your tetrahedrons on the blank paper and traced them. Place the deck on the tetrahedrons, step 3. Step 4, gently place 1 book at a time on the deck. Step 5, count 5 seconds before placing another book on the top. Step 6, record how many books until it collapsed. Step 7, carefully remove the debris from the carnage, or carefully remove the books from the tetrahedrons. Step 7, mark the weaknesses that caused the collapse. Show your evidence. Okay, so that is your procedure. So the next step is the results. And you were not here for all the class data that was generated on the board. I went ahead and made the table for the entire 8th grade because it was rather tedious and it's in a document, but it could be done. So basically your table looks like this, and you are getting this table from me to put in your results section. Okay, so what do you, it says in the rubric that you need to write, include raw data that talks about your quantitative and your qualitative data. So if you're looking at this table, this is your qualitative because it's not numbers. This is your quantitative because it's how many books were held. You also have to write a sentence or two that briefly summarizes your results that's displayed in the table. So your group, or if you're remote, you're saying my bridge held how many books. You decide what that statement is, because I don't know what it is because you're telling me from your results. The second sentence, the entire 8th grade data. If your bridge held 2 books at home, you would look at see how many other bridges held 2 books. If yours held 3 books, how many of yours out of the 14? Now you're gonna add 2 more or 1 more because you are the 15th bridge being tested at home. So you take that and add 1 more. So you would say if you were 1, 2, 3, 4, and farther down, there's 7 that held 2. You would say 7 plus yours is 8 out of 15. That's just an example. You're gonna have to come up with your data. So you can copy this. I'm gonna give you this as a picture to place in the results section on your lab report. You have to generate this data right here. Moving to your conclusion. Our conclusion is 7 points. One of those summarizes your purpose, process, and results, so that's 1 sentence. It confirms or disproves your hypothesis. You have to say whether your bridge and your hypothesis was correct. And then it has to identify any errors. So basically what we talked about in class was that this was not a highly controlled experiment. If I look at my highest number held, which was 4, we had 2 groups that were holding 4 books, but their arrangement is completely different than this class's arrangement for 4 books. So basically, kind of all over the map here. So this was an inconclusive experiment because there are too many controls that are not variables that are not controlled. And that's what you talk about in your conclusion. So in your conclusion, here are the things that we came up with. This experiment is inconclusive. There were too many variables to determine which would be the best arrangement of the tetrahedrons. Not all students made or brought their tetrahedrons, so there were fewer trials. There could have been probably 5 or 6 more trials in our data set. You tell whether your hypothesis was correct, but it's still inconclusive because, which all of that should be here. Okay? You have to say whether your maybe your hypothesis was incorrect, but it's still inconclusive. There were too many variables to determine which was the best arrangement of the tetrahedrons. Not all students made or brought them. Here are some of the things as you look at the rubric. Identify some errors that occurred and suggest improvements if you redid this. Could have been errors in the construction of the shape, such as not all the knots were tied correctly or tightly to the straws. Possible errors in measuring the length of straws, so you may not have been the best at measuring 6 centimeters, so they maybe were not all the same length, which would have an effect on your results. And each one person built 1 tetrahedron out of the 4. You guys at home built all yours, so you were probably the only one building yours. But once you have each person building a different their own tetrahedron, you've lost control of that variable. It would have been more controlled if the best builder in the group would have made all 4 tetrahedrons. If you could do this experiment again, what would you change? And that's your last part of this 7 points in your conclusion. So you can see there are multiple sentences to make your paragraph for your conclusion. In this instance, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 long sentence for 5, 6, 7. You could have easily 10 sentences, but you should have 7 sentences. And you're covering the parts of the rubric that you need to. There you go. That is how you write your lab report. I will put all your information plus this video in Google Classroom so that you can have all the materials that you need. Thanks for doing your experiment. Hope you had fun with this one.